All right, as promised in the last episode, I told you guys I'd be back at some point later this week. I thought it'd be kind of cool to just do a little Thanksgiving special, Thanksgiving edition for, my favorite holiday. I think it's definitely, most people say Christmas, or a lot of people like Halloween now too, just because they get to dress up and all that fun stuff. But to me, it's always been Thanksgiving, because that means the Cowboys are always on TV, usually surrounded by lots of friends and family, and there's always lots of really good food on the table. So you got family, food, and football. It's hard to beat that trio right there, the 3 F's. So I love Thanksgiving, and just hope you guys are enjoying this beautiful day, beautiful weather, for all the aforementioned reasons I just stated. So so we'll get going here real quick. The topic that I mentioned I wanted to discuss today or later this week in Monday's video was regarding the wide receiver, I guess the phenomenon that we're seeing, and why they're able to translate more easily now, much more so than they used to, just based on the way that the NFL has kind of adopted and evolved to a more pass-heavy college style approach, schematically, I guess, from an offensive perspective. And so if you want to go back and listen to some of my judgment and my reasoning as to why that is, you can feel free to do so. But I wanted to talk about this wide receiver class just because the matchup that we saw with CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson, those two guys obviously popped, and so it just kind of thought it'd be something fun to talk about, just to kind of see where this wide receiver class potentially could stack up amongst other receiver classes historically. So the two that stood out just by doing a little bit of quick research, obviously the 2014 class with Devontae Adams, Odell Beckham Jr., Mike Evans, Jarvis Landry, and Brandon Cooks. I just picked the 5 best names who have had the best start from that class through 7 seasons. And then going back to the actual one that we're going to base a little bit of the judgment off of, just because the 2014 class, all those guys are still playing. They're still active and, molding their careers and kind of solidifying their status as NFL, potential future Hall of Famers. But the 1996 class to me stands out as of right now as the best wide receiver draft class in NFL history. And those names are the top 4 that I selected: Terrell Owens, Marvin Harrison, Keyshawn Johnson, and Muhsin Muhammad. So those top 4 guys, we're going to kind of focus on T.O. and Marvin. Those two in particular are, it's pretty widely accepted that those two guys are amongst, probably the top 5, 2 of the top 5 receivers in NFL history. And so what I wanted to look at, basically, the basis for judgment was, what does an average season for a Hall of Fame receiver look like? And I actually learned something else too. I thought it was going to be way more than that, but it just shows you how elite of a class and elite of company that this really is. There's only 29 receivers currently that have been inducted formally into the Hall of Fame. So that's pretty elite company already as it is. And to have 2 guys from that 1996 class, which is, why I think that's the best class ever. Randy Moss's, Jerry Rice's class, just he alone could honestly make his class, regardless of whoever else was drafted in that draft. He alone just kind of could set anything else over the top. But since these are 2 of the top 5 guys here in the 1996 class, T.O., Marvin Harrison, both Hall of Famers, that to me right now is the top one. So we're going to look at that real quick. T.O.'s stat line: he played 15 seasons, averaged 71 catches for 1,060 yards and 10 touchdowns. Pretty ridiculous, gaudy numbers there. That's just an average season for him. And same thing for Marvin Harrison, 13 seasons, so not quite 15, but 13 seasons, 84 catches, 1,100 total yards, and 10 touchdowns. So what I then did was, those are obviously 2 cream of the crop exceptions amongst, those are 2 of the elite amongst an already elite pool of players. Okay, so we're looking at ridiculous company, and to even think that this current receiver draft class could ever stack up with that is kind of crazy. So it seems almost impossible right now, but I do think that based on what we've seen so far, and just already how these guys have kind of taken a step, that it is possible to become it's possible that we could see two of these guys become Hall of Famers, 10, 12 years from now, or put together Hall of Fame careers when it's time to hang up the cleats. But to eclipse what those two guys did, T.O. and Marvin Harrison, I'm going to go ahead and preface the rest of the video by saying that it's highly unlikely that any two of these rookie receivers from the 2020 class stack up, eye to eye with T.O. and Marvin, okay? But so what I did was, basically I went below kind of the cream of the crop in T.O. and Marvin, right? And I looked at what would be, so like an average Hall of Famer. that's doesn't even really make sense to me either. I say average Hall of Fame, that's like an oxymoron. Like there's no such thing. Like they're all elite. So it's like elite Hall of Fame. But so just for argument's sake here, the average Hall of Famer, I selected Isaac Bruce, and this is all from Pro Football Focus, guys. So I wanted to make sure that I made that clear as well. Pro Football Focus is a great reference, just a lot of statistics that you can go and find and look up pretty much just about anything you ever want. So I selected what I think to be an average Hall of Fame receiver, okay? So Isaac Bruce, 1994 to 2009, he played 16 seasons, and he averaged just over 1,000 catches. So sorry, not average. So these are his career numbers through 16 years. Just over 1,000 catches, just over 15,000 yards, and 91 touchdowns for an average per year of 62 catches, 937 yards, and 6 touchdowns. So 62 for 937 and 6. That's what Isaac Bruce's career, what he had to, technically average to carve out that role and enter the Hall of Fame. So what I've looked at then is I've taken Isaac Bruce, and then I've compared him to what we've seen so far this year from Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Chase Claypool, T. Higgins, and Jerry Jeudy. And so I just took their numbers through 10 weeks and then averaged them out for the remainder of the season, so an extra 6 games, and calculated what their numbers are on pace for. So for Justin Jefferson, so keep in mind, 62 for 937, we'll call it 62 for 930 and 6. So that's the mark, right? That they need to average over a sustained period of time, at least 10 years. Just about everybody, I think, I didn't go through all 29 names, but just about every name that I looked at, all of those guys played longer than 10 seasons, okay? So you're going to want to think about that, number 2. But so 62 for 930 and 6, that's the mark we're looking at. Right now, Justin Jefferson is on pace to have 72 for 1,307. So well above the catches and receiving yards mark, and then pretty much right on pace with what he needs touchdown-wise. So fantastic rookie season for Justin Jefferson already. Like I said, 72 catches for 1,300 yards and 7 touchdowns. CeeDee Lamb, currently on pace to just eclipse Justin Jefferson's receiving mark, but he's just under him, his yardage totals right now. But so CeeDee Lamb, through, if we average his numbers out through 16 game season, his numbers come out to 76 catches for just over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. That's what he's on pace for. So we've got 72 for 1,307 for Justin Jefferson, and we've got 76 for 1,007 for CeeDee Lamb. So both of those guys, as of right now, for one season, are on pace to, do what it takes to earn themselves Hall of Fame recognition. If they were to be able to sustain that for longer than 10 years, basically like throughout the course of their career for at least 10 years. Okay, so that's the minimum number. Chase Claypool, 62 catches, so right on target. 894 yards and 14 touchdowns, which is crazy. That's likely unsustainable there, but so he's just below pace from a yardage perspective, but he's more than doubled the pace of the touchdowns, and so that's obviously not going to go unrecognized either. The last 2 real quick, guys. T. Higgins, 68 catches for 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. That's what he's on pace for this season. And Jerry Jeudy is on pace for 59 catches for 942 yards and 4 touchdowns. So if we want to get technical, 4 of those 5 guys that I just named are on pace or above pace in at least 2 of those categories, 3 of which are on or above pace for all 3. So looking good right now for those guys to be able to potentially, like I said, I want to be real careful here and not just go ahead and shoe in anything as set in stone, because that's obvious. There's a lot of things that have to go right. Longevity is part of a Hall of Fame career. Like you have to sustain excellence over an extended period of time. So we can't rule that out here. There's so many factors, especially National Football League. The average lifespan is about 3 years. So injuries happen, and it's nothing's guaranteed. Okay, so that 2014 class though, I wanted to just kind of highlight these 3 names as well: Devontae Adams, Odell Beckham Jr., and Mike Evans. Mike actually is leading that class right now from an average catches, yards, and touchdowns perspective per season through 7 seasons. So these guys are already approaching the 10-year mark. They each need to play at least 3 more years and average the same relative statistics, being over 62 catches for 900 yards and 6 touchdowns. And it looks like those guys have done that 7 years in a row now. It doesn't appear that they are slowing down anytime soon. So it looks like Devontae, Odell, and Mike all may have a chance to become Hall of Fame wide receivers as well. So that would technically, if that were to happen, and you can't become a Hall of Famer until you've been retired for at least 5 years. So that's still way down the road before we ever even have an idea of whether or not these guys are going to in fact earn that honor. But hypothetically speaking, those 3 guys have done enough, and if they just continue to do so just for a few more years, will have done enough to at least have the ability to earn that. So basically that would be the 3rd name, or the 3 names that would be enough to eclipse what we saw with, or what we talked about with T.O. and Marvin. So if we want to just think about it, fast forward to at least 10 years down the road or so, when all 3 guys, if and when they do get in, that would be technically the most receivers that earn Hall of Fame honors in any class in NFL history. That would take over the 96 class with T.O. and Marvin at 2. So if we get 3 from the 2014 class, that becomes the new mark. And so now we're looking at even more elite company from what we expect from the rookie receivers here in this class. So I just thought that was kind of a little fun exercise to look at, just seeing what these guys are doing now. It used to be rarefied air for any rookie receiver to eclipse the 1,000-yard mark, and now it's looking like we're going to have 3, potentially 4 of those guys that do that, and maybe even 5 if Chase Claypool can have a couple more splash games here in the next 6 weeks before the season ends. It looks like there's potential for 5 rookie receivers to eclipse the 1,000-yard mark, and I'm not sure about this either. I want to double check that as well. I should have already looked, but I believe there had only been 8 receivers to do so. Maybe it's 6 or 8 receivers rookie receivers to eclipse the 1,000-yard mark over the course of the last 20 seasons moving back. And now this year we may have 5. That's just crazy to me to think about. So that's just kind of the elite level of talent and production that we're seeing from such a young group of receivers. And I thought it was fun to look at that and see how they stack up, and how their numbers this season, if you project it through a full 16 game slate, what that looks like, and if they're on pace to potentially be able to do that over a long period of time. And so I just think T.O., Marvin Harrison, those guys, untouchable from just like a player perspective. Like, I don't see, it's impossible to say definitively for anybody to ever achieve what those 2 guys did. Okay, so those 2 guys alone, I don't know, regardless of what happens with the other 3 from the 2014 class, it may not be possible. But just looking at these numbers, it's very likely that we see at least one of these guys, maybe 2. Who knows? But join that Hall of Fame class. I'd love it. Obviously, if CD was one of them, that'd be amazing. So anyways, I just thought that was fun exercise to look at. I think 62 catches a year, 900 yards and 6 touchdowns seems pretty attainable, as long health permitting, that any couple, maybe 3 of these guys could be able to do that. So it's going to be fun to watch and see how that all plays out. Thanksgiving edition, obviously, guys. That's it for that exercise. Just wanted to talk briefly about what I saw from the first half of that Lions game. Really not much to talk about other than the very end. It kind of frustrated me a little bit to see, 3rd and 8, I believe it was. Matthew Stafford drops back in the pocket. They need like 5 yards to get points on the board before the half. I think it's a 10-point game or something right now. But I was just like, if they can go get on the board here, whether that be in the end zone or get 3 points, that'd be a win for them going into halftime. They feel good about themselves. And then, you see Stafford drop back. It's like a 5-step drop with, they need 3 yards to gain to be in range for Matt Prater. And Stafford, obviously, coverage downfield. I didn't even get to see the replay. I just kind of walked out of the room because it frustrated me so much that he took the sack. But it's like there's no security blanket in the flat for him to dump it down to and check it to just at least have a chance. Put it in Kerryon Johnson's hands, see if he can break a tackle, get in field goal range, and get out of bounds. And he said they still had timeouts left too. They could have easily done something to get points before the half ended, and Stafford just takes a sack, inexplicably. So that just stuff like that frustrates me so much. And respect to Matt Patricia, but I think it's just time for that guy to go. I think the writing's already on the wall. It's been clamored about and rumored for, it feels like, the last 6 to 8 weeks now. When's it going to happen? So frustrating to see that. I know obviously all their skill position players are hurt. It seems like DeAndre Swift's out, Kenny Galladay's out, and a few other pretty significant names. So it's just like frustrating to see that when you have a chance to go get points, regardless of the health of all your skill position players, and you take a sack there. So that was frustrating. But previewing the Cowboys and the Washington football team, I think the team that we saw on Sunday, if that team shows up, I really don't see Washington hanging in there just because of the firepower that we have offensively. Andy Dalton continues to become more comfortable in a pretty well protected pocket that we saw on Sunday. Then it's hard to see the Cowboys scoring less than 24 points or so, 27 points, and being in just about any game, which is crazy to think about now, considering where we're at 3-7. But this is going to be the real test for our offensive line. I know I talked in the last video, Zach Martin got, they swung him out to right tackle, and that shored up a lot of things. And they only gave up 1 sack, which in fact wasn't even, it was a coverage sack. And so, that's all fine and dandy, but that was against the Minnesota Vikings, who are, before the season started, they were only bringing back 2 defensive starters from last year's team, which were Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr. So, and Anthony Barr didn't even play yesterday. He's been out all year with a torn pectoral. So, lot of new moving parts there from Minnesota. So this will be the real test. You've got 3, I think maybe 4 first-round picks that are featured in Washington's front 4 alone, just on their defensive line. So we'll see how that line stacks up, and I think that's ultimately going to be the difference. That this game's going to be one of the trenches between the battle of our offensive line and Washington's defensive line. If they can keep Andy Dalton upright, I think it's going to be a really competitive game. I think it's divisional games are always close, so we'll see. Like I said, I'm kind of whatever happens here. I'm happy with the result. Whether we win or whether we lose, just because you guys know where I stand on the whole the draft slot aspect of how this season could play out. So, anyways, I think there's probably something I'm forgetting. Texas plays tomorrow against Iowa State. I'm excited to watch that game. Another thing too, it's another one of those things. If Texas wins, they control their own destiny to get to the Big 12 title game against OU. Talked about that as well. OU obviously has to win out still too, but it's like if they lose, there's all these rumors now about Tom Herman potentially being replaced and bought out, so they can bring in Urban Meyer, which obviously I would love that, just from a fan perspective, and just seeing what he could potentially do from a recruiting perspective, and just kind of getting this team back to where I feel like they belong. It's like, we're talking about the whole recruiting aspect. They lost Quinn Ewers, who at the time of his commitment was the #1 overall player in next year's recruiting class, the 2021 class. So he has since decommitted from Texas and committed to Ohio State, which I said in I think the third or fourth video I made, I don't even remember. I said, from his perspective, I totally get that. For me, it stinks to see a guy like him go, because when you're talking about recruiting now from a guy that's, of his caliber that high up, he's got pull. So where he goes, a lot of the other top recruits around the country are going to follow. And that's just the way that it is. And so, like I said, I was just watching my brother-in-law's football game yesterday, thinking, these are all 17, 18-year-old kids that are coming out of high school now being recruited. And I'm just thinking to myself, these kids were babies. They don't remember the last time Texas was nationally relevant. If you want to say 2009, then, the last national championship, the game they played in, they were 5 years old, 4 years old whenever that was going on. I don't even know if the math checks out there, but the point being is that Texas, the reason why they can win recruiting battles in state, against other teams, against, TCU, Baylor, obviously Rice, and even neighboring states, sometimes against OU and OSU. But when Nick Saban, when used to Urban Meyer, when now like Dabo Swinney, when guys like that from around the country come into these kids' living rooms and sit down and talk to their parents, they're not selling, like what Texas does. They're not saying, hey, come play for a storied tradition and rich history, and come bring us back. Come help us get back to that national relevance. They're not selling that. Like those three guys that I just mentioned, those coaches, Lincoln Riley, now they walk into a living room, they're getting respect. These kids, they're like, their high school years, they're watching these teams compete for national championships. Texas isn't in that picture. So you can see I'm passionate about this, just because it's like, I guess I was just had this false perception of what I thought Texas should be, and like winning all these big time recruiting battles nationwide, and I've realized since it's not it doesn't work anymore. You can't sell a kid who was 3 years old the last time you were relevant competing for national titles. You can't sell him on tradition. You can't sell him on, hey, come bring us back. That stuff doesn't resonate. This is an instant gratification world that we live in, and these kids, they're seeing all these top programs go compete for national titles. They want to join in and win now, and go, be basically turn themselves into first round picks. All those other programs do that. Texas hasn't, and that's just the way that it is. That's the facts. Like, they're recruiting well because they're the giant in the state, but nationwide they're not. So, if we can get a guy like Urban Meyer to come in, which is why, it's like, of course, I want Texas to win tomorrow. Like I said, instant gratification. I want to compete for a Big 12 title. I want to earn the respect of, my friends, or, my rival friends who support other Big 12 teams. Like, I want to have the bragging rights. Absolutely. But, at the same time, it's almost the same situation we're in with the Cowboys right now. If my team loses tomorrow, if Texas loses to Iowa State, which is very possible, Tom Herman's actually great coming off bye week, so I actually do like their chances to win that game. We're not going to dive into the X's and O's there, but if they don't, I'm not going to be upset, because I know what could potentially come from a loss and another disappointing season. So it's crazy to sometimes you got to take a couple steps back to make any progress going forward, but that's just the way that it is, and that's the reality. So anyways, guys, this video once again went longer than I expected, but just wanted to honor my word on the receiver debate. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm sorry if there was a lot of numbers being thrown at you, but I kind of enjoyed just at least looking it up and seeing where we're at right now. And I hope you guys don't eat too much food, enjoy watching football, and enjoy the rest of the Thanksgiving with your families. So, yeah, I guess with that, that's all I got. I'll see you guys next Monday. Sunday or Monday. I haven't decided yet. See y'all later.